What's going on, guys? Ride Flawless here, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite games of all time. And I don't really talk about it much on the channel, and that is Hogwarts Legacy. And I'm particularly talking about Hogwarts Legacy for Switch 2. I'm going to give you my in depth review, so let's get into it. Alright, let's start off by talking about the bad. There's a few things in the game that I think just visually don't come together as well as possible and could probably use some patchwork in the future and hopefully get panned out. The first one I want to talk about is when you get to the first Cross Wands mission, so fairly early in the game, your first look at outside, you go through this corridor that goes from inside to outside, and then you go back inside. It's just a very short thing, but it's early on in the game. And if you look out to the left and see the mountains and the skyline, you can see that there's some blur up at the top of the mountain. It's literally like a specific mountain, and you see it when you're out in the open world, and it's just a specific location, but you see this huge line of just blur where the mountain meets the sky from the DLSS. There shouldn't be that noticeable, in my opinion, of your upscaling technique, and it's not really present in most of the rest of the game, but right there is just a really ugly spot. And with it being so early on, I do feel like it needs to get fixed. Another thing that I found that was bad, and I haven't seen any other reviews or anything bring this up, even like Digital Foundry that's very in-depth, and they didn't even bring up the mountain, but I saw, I believe, IGN bring that up, and when I got to playing it, it is very noticeable. But this is one that none of them brought up, and that's the outline on your targeted enemies in combat. It just doesn't feel like that outline mechanic upscales correctly. So you see all the textures and all the detail on the other, on all of the NPCs, all the enemies, what have you. As soon as they're highlighted with that white outline, they lose textures, and the outline itself doesn't seem to upscale correctly, in my opinion. It might just be my eyes, but something about that doesn't look as clean as maybe it should. Reminds me a bit of how it looked on the Switch 1, and that's very odd considering the whole rest of the game is leaps and bounds above the Switch 1 version. Now I want to talk about things that are exclusive to the Switch 2 version, but I'll start with one that's only kind of exclusive as it is on the Switch 1 version as well, and that's the motion controls that you can use for learning the spells, which is kind of a cool feature. I actually haven't really messed around with it, and I've played through the Switch version, and now I'm like 70% through the Switch 2 version, and I like to play it handheld, so that's not really my preferred way to play using any of the motion controls. And the next one that I want to go over is the mouse controls, which I did mess around with because it's new and I really wanted to try it. I do think the mouse controls do feel pretty good, and they're seamless, unlike in Cyberpunk where you have to go change in the settings. You just turn the Joy-Con sideways in this and you're good to go. They feel good, they're great in the map, they're good for moving around, especially if you're just doing a very casual play and you're not planning on doing a lot of combat. There's no reason not to use the mouse controls if you want to, because exploring and what have you is very fun and very relaxing with the mouse controls. And then the other one, and this is one that I'm surprised that no one has brought up, and I can't really show this in the video, but I did confirm because I was playing, I was like, is that really doing that? And what I'm talking about is the HD Rumble 2 has this ability to rumble at specific frequencies to make sound. And when you're doing the Alohomora to unlock locks, you can hear a sound when you get both of the locks lined up, or the different cogs lined up, whatever that is. Once they're lined up, you will get a specific sound that's not coming from the speakers, it's actually coming from the rumble. And I turned off the sound just to confirm that this was the case. And I don't think it's the best noise. It kind of sounds like a little fart sound, but I do still think it's cool that they did try and implement this feature into the game. Now let's go over the basic or overall visual and performance aspects of this version of the game. And so to start this off, the first place I played Hogwarts Legacy was on a PlayStation 4 Pro. And visually what you're getting here is very, very similar. So you're getting that 1080p upscaled version of the game. So you get the 1080p visuals using DLSS. In handheld, it's upscaling from 540 or something, 520, something around those lines. And it's upscaling from 720p when it's in docked, but both have 1080p. And honestly, it looks very clean. There's not a lot of noise or anything going on the screen, bar those couple of instances that I did bring up in the bad, that being the DLSS blur in the skyline and the outlines. But other than that, it looks very, very clean and very comparable to the PlayStation 4 Pro. It's better than the base PlayStation 4 model, which is only 900p. However, that is a native 900p, where there are differences, and they're very, very slight. The Switch 2 version has slightly less foliage than the PlayStation 4 version has, but it's very, very slight. If you look at the games side by side, you're probably not even going to notice it. But it is there, and you can see a few instances where it has been scaled back. The shadows do look a bit better on PlayStation 4 Pro. However, the lighting looks better on Switch 2 in a lot of cases. And also, there's assets that are changed between the two. I'll say that the assets, for the most part, mirror that PlayStation 4 Pro version. But you do get some of the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series like vistas and views that were blocked out on the PlayStation 4 version. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and some of the textures are a little bit better here and there. But overall visual presentation is very, very similar to the PlayStation 4 Pro version. Although there are instances where the DLSS drops out because of dynamic resolution. And on handheld, that's a lot more noticeable, being as it does drop to a below HD resolution, whereas it's only dropping to 720p in docked mode. There is some noise and jaggies around the hair in some cases, which is fairly normal for Unreal Engine and happens in PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro version as well. I don't know that there's necessarily more of it, but I did notice that during the winter in the snow, it is more visible. So that is something that I did notice more of a negative critique there, because games like Cyberpunk on PlayStation 4 Pro, I did find that the jaggies in the hair were kind of like a negative point of that graphical presentation. But one of the huge upsides of the Switch 2 version over the PlayStation 4 Pro version is the loading times, because when I first played the PlayStation 4 Pro version, the load times, some of them were up to a minute, maybe even a little bit longer. On average now, they're like 45 seconds on the PlayStation 4 Pro version. And on the Switch 2, the longest you're generally getting is probably around 15, maybe 17 seconds top when you're doing fast travel, something like that. So it's not very immersion breaking compared to the similar version. Overall, I do think that this is an incredible version of the game. It is night and day between this version and the Switch 1 version. The only thing that I'll say that is kind of negative is I don't feel like it's a proper, like, fully optimized version of the game, like fully utilizing the Switch 2 hardware. It feels very much like a port of the PlayStation version that has DLSS to get the visuals cleaner, and the load times are enhanced. It doesn't feel like something new, whereas the Switch 1 version, while it is the worst visual version of the game, there's just kind of a magic to it in getting it to run on the Switch at all. This we kind of know that the Switch 2 is powerful enough to run this game, and this version does feel like a bit more of a port than its own entity, which does make it lose a little bit of magic in translation. But overall, I do adore this version of the game, and I would 100% recommend it. But if you like what you heard and saw in this video, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe. You're all flawless, and I'll see you next time. Bye.